Welcome back to Ceasefire Podcast. This is episode 12. We've made it to 12 episodes, and we are asking the question. Weird. It is weird. We're asking the question, is democracy dead in America? And we have a really great video that we're going to use as a catalyst to the discussion from Bill Maher, of all people. Yeah. And should be a good video. We're trying to find content creators' videos to react to that we think would be great for discussion. And we just had on our good friend Gothix. If you didn't see that episode, make sure and check that out. And if you really want to support the podcast directly, use the links below or go to ceasefirepodcast.com and become a patron. That is the most direct way to keep this thing going. Andrew, we were looking for something to cover, and we had a video. We might kick that one to next week, talking about like woke. What is woke? What's it mean? Should we even use that term anymore? And then we stumbled on this one, and you were like, that's the one. What made you pick this video with Bill Maher?
Wow, I just think there's a lot of meat on the bone when I checked it out. There's a lot of moments, because I'm imagining the discussion surrounding it, right? Are there enough catalysts in there to provoke some pretty good analysis on our end? And to be frank, I'm looking for opportunities for us to disagree as well, because I think that makes for good content. And so I think there's a lot of room in here to take this, a lot of the points that he makes, in a number of different directions. And, I've got some thoughts and the like, but I wanted to throw an initial video your way. I felt like this was like the tone setter for the magnitude of the subject and the severity of it. So I really wanted to kind of, lay down the proper mood, so to speak. This is a quick one, literally like 15 seconds long.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to get your reaction to this one specifically.
Well,
I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, the title of it is really, I think, clearly very relevant to what we're talking about. The perils of piloting a spaceship and eating a cheeseburger at the same time. I wonder if we could actually really take this and say that this is analogous to our democracy, without
it's metaphorical, no doubt. Like, it's a powerful metaphor.
I feel bad for this guy. Without further ado, this is Porkins in Star Wars.
I'm going in.
The real reason he died.
I'm right with you, Red 3. I'm over here. Eject. I can hold it. Pull on. No, I'm all right.
My favorite part about it is he says, I can hold it. Like, and actually, I didn't catch that the first time. He actually says something like, "No, I can hold it. I've got the food. I'm ready."
Doing this.
I'm ready. Yeah, he's holding it.
Oh man,
that reminds me of the time my friend, he had this Jeep. And we had stopped to get food, and I had set my drink, and I was not ready yet. I was getting myself buckled in, and he moved the car, and the entire drink just hit the bottom, and I quickly picked my feet up, and it was a flood of soda. I mean, like an inch deep in his Jeep. I was like, his name was Dan. I was like, Dad gummit, Dan.
That's not what you said.
No, I actually said that. I did. I said,
you said Dad gummit?
Yeah, I said Dad gummit, because he said it back. He was laughing so hard. He was like, we both looked at each other and just started laughing. It was one of those insane situations. So, well, let's get to the actual video now. Now that we're laughing, this has become a comedy.
This subject matter, though, is so serious and heavy, and I feel like not only on this show, but in America in general, we've lost our sense of humor.
Right. Yeah.
Because everything's so serious all the time.
Yeah. Every joke is a chronological.
Everything is an attack. Everything is something to respond to. You know what I mean? Everybody is triggered all the time.
Imagine being a stand-up comedy, like all their material is like a chronologically ticking time bomb. Like in 10 years, is their material going to be offensive? It's like,
I think we should do an episode and title it, "Is Stand-Up Comedy Dead?"
Let's get somebody on here, man. Let's get Bill Burr.
Let's get a comedian.
Yeah, let's get him.
Oh gosh,
Let's
if
try
we could get Bill Burr,
I love him.
That would be incredible.
It'd be amazing.
He's my favorite.
Well,
he just doesn't care.
No, he doesn't.
The way he transcends, and maybe we can wrap this into our discussion. The way he transcends everything that's going on is by just not caring.
Right.
He doesn't care.
Right.
He doesn't care what anyone thinks, and he just says it. And I'm like, I don't agree with everything he says, obviously, but the attitude, it's pretty good. It's pretty right on. All right, let's check out this Bill Maher clip, and I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, we'll probably end up pausing quite a bit. This will be a long flyover, so for the people that enjoy this opening segment, keep in mind when we do the trenches, which is when we make it a little bit more personal about our own beliefs, that is behind a paywall, as well as the debrief when we just talk about how the episode went. So if you want that extra content, that's why you got to go to the Patreon. All right, let's get in here.
And finally, new rule. Well, we had a good run. I know that's not really a rule, but since everything in America is about to change in a very fundamental way, what the fuck? Rules are about to go out the window.
Yeah.
We should mention that this was aired prior to the midterms.
Yeah.
So what he is talking about is this sort of fatalistic resignation among liberals, progressives, Democrats that a red wave is coming through the election that just happened this past November. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. I forgot to do a language warning. Sorry to anybody who watches this. We might swear in jest sometimes in the paid content, but we typically don't swear on this podcast. And he decided to drop the big one right away. So sorry about that.
I totally forgot that he did that.
Yeah, I forgot too. So yeah, thanks.
Apologies.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll throw the NSFW in the description and such.
Yeah. All right.
Tuesday is election day, and I know I should probably tell you to vote in what, honest to God, is really the most important election ever. So, okay, yes, you should vote. And it should be for the one party that still stands for democracy preservation.
Pause. Okay. One of the things that I would love to discuss with you in general and in specific to this episode is the war or the Cold War over language that is taking place in society right now.
Yeah.
Words, phrases, and concepts have been co-opted in recent years and in some cases redefined. In other cases, just ascribed to an ideology and politicized. And the word democracy itself has been compromised. It applies to a specific perspective on things, as does the word freedom. These words have been so polarized now that at some point in this video, in our discussion, we should probably discuss, what does the word democracy mean, and probably some of his other words that he uses as well, because there will be a lot of buzzwords in his monologue.
Yeah. Well, the thing that stands out to me is if we're going to argue that democracy's dead, or we're going to talk about the corruption and the absolute paralyzed state of the government with respect to not really having a government for the people and by the people, there isn't one side that's still pro-democracy. Like, I'm sure he's going to get into why he thinks this. And I watched the first half of this and thought, this is perfect. I think he makes some good points about things Republicans have said and done that are worrying. It's like, wait, what? Like, and it just reinvigorates and reentrenches the idea that we're all enemies. Like, no one is going to get anything done because it's just a polarized split. So he's going to get into that in a moment. But I would not look at the Democrats and act like, oh yeah, they're super pro-democracy. Like, they're just as beholden to corporations and lobbyists as the rest of them. So,
but that is part of the language that the blue side has made their own. We are the party of democracy.
Right.
And the other party is anti-democracy. Right. And if you are not a part of our story, our thing, then you are anti-democracy. Those are the implications of everything that he just said.
Yeah.
You can keep going when
Yep.
you're ready.
Let's go.
Unless you have another comment.
No, let's go. Crowd liked it.
But
The choir.
it's also a waste of breath because anyone who believes that is already voting, and anyone who needs to learn that isn't watching, and no one in America can be persuaded of anything anymore anyway.
True statement.
The January 6th hearings, it turns out, changed nobody's mind. Democrat Jamie Raskin said the hearings would tell a story that will really blow the roof off the House. No, that was Hurricane Ian. The hearings, roof not blown. The committee did a masterful job laying out the case, but we live in partisan America now. So it's a little like doing stand-up when half the crowd only speaks Mandarin. No matter how good the material is, it's not going to go over. After all the hearings, the percentage of Americans who thought Trump did nothing wrong went up 3 points. That's America now. It's like trying to win an argument in a marriage. Even when you're right, it still gets you nothing.
Okay. Pause. Okay, so he's basically saying the January 6th committee
Mm-hmm.
formed a great argument to prove legally why basically the goal of the committee is to make it so that Trump cannot run for president again.
Right.
And what he's implying there, if you read between the lines, is that the reason why the January 6th committee did not gain traction is because there's a problem with our society. And there's a problem with America.
Mm-hmm.
Run with that. Tell me, what do you think?
Right. I
What
know
is he implying?
he's implying, and I tend to agree with him that it doesn't matter what was found or what was discovered. Both sides are like, I don't care. Like, you're worse than my side. You know what I'm saying? Like, Trump has said and done reprehensible things. He's an uncontrollable sort of blowhard. Like, he's not the kind of person you would think is somebody you would want to vote to be the president. And yet, because he represents one side, they kind of think he can do no wrong. Like the fact that he's saying, like, people that think he didn't do anything wrong went up. It's like, that's because they kind of have to. Like, that's what you do in this very split culture that we're in now. People did the same thing with Hillary. It was like she could do no wrong. None of the things that got brought up about her that were concerning or worrying, it was always minimized by that side. And then people
Well, the same thing is happening now with the current president as well.
Right. Everything's minimized. Everything's it's basically,
excuse me,
it's an a priori commitment. Like, you make this commitment to your side beforehand, which means nothing can really unseat that commitment. And that's an unfalsifiable position. That's a dangerous place to be. That means you're an ideologue. Like, you're not going to ever look at your side and say, man, our president, our congressman, our senator really screwed up here or isn't fit for office. I did not look at the hearings enough to know whether or not they made a compelling case. I felt like they were going to have a hard time making a compelling case because while he was reckless and I think he crossed lines that should not be crossed by leaders, I was like, they're going to have a really hard time making a legal case here because it was the statements were so generic that he was at one level protected, and at another level, it's like, if you're going to try to make a legal case, that you need straighter lines than that. You can't have generic statements that were made interpreted through what people thought he meant. So, because I would never have. I'm not going to defend what he said or how he behaved. But I was like, I don't know if they were going to be able to make a legal case here because I looked at all of the quotes and I wasn't really compelled they had a legal case. I'm not a lawyer.
No, a lot of the evidence was circumstantial as well. There wasn't enough there. There just wasn't enough there. And, I mean, the rhetoric is flawed on both sides. So the rhetoric on one side is, Trump can do no wrong. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's the savior. And on the other side, to many, not to everyone.
Right.
Really, honestly, I read a stat the other day. We're talking, the people that are forming the narrative are between 6 and 8% of each respective party. We're talking about a loud, vocal minority of extremists that are basically dictating the way everything is being approached. So we're not actually talking about majorities here. We're talking about the extreme loud on both sides. You know, both of which are equal. Both perspectives are equally problematic in many ways.
Yeah.
But we're talking about January 6th. It's, again, not an either or situation, and it's treated like an either or situation by the media. It's either it was akin to Pearl Harbor and September 11th in terms of its severity and give me a word, you know what I mean, in terms of the level of smear that it is on the history of this country.
Yeah.
Or there was absolutely nothing done wrong whatsoever. And I think probably the truth is in the middle somewhere. You know, although if you're asking my personal opinion on these things, maybe we save this for the trenches. There are always shreds of truth and shreds of information that can't be refuted, even in the flawed narratives of both sides, right? So I think there, on one sense, you know, what was January 6th really about? It was about one president not conceding the election to the other president because of a lack of trust in the process, right? Or the belief that shenanigans went down regarding the election. If that's true, then there is a case to be made to you know, push back, basically. If it's not, then Trump was completely in the wrong. You know what I'm saying? By even encouraging people to fight. However, again, we're just talking specific to January 6th. What is missed, and what I only have heard brought up in recent history, is before he was banned from Twitter, his last two tweets were basically telling people, be peaceful, operate within, you know, we're the party of I'm paraphrasing, but I believe he said we're the party of being civilized in our protest type of thing. You know, I say we because I'm quoting him. I'm not saying we because I'm necessarily a part of the crew there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I saw some of the tweets where he called for things to be peaceful, but the main criticism was some of the things he said at the rally, and then some of the things he tweeted definitely sounded like, hey, go down there and fight. Like, go down there and fight to take back what, you know, has been wrongfully taken from us. And I don't think we qualify whether or not what he did was wrong by whether or not there were or were not shenanigans. Like, if something went down, that's not the appropriate way to handle it. Like, they tried as much research as I felt like doing into this, and as much as I looked into it, was like at every level they tried to bring bad things to light. They lost every suit. Like, they didn't get anywhere with this. And in the realm of conspiracy and trying to steal an election, I was not compelled. I was like, it would be beyond keeping quiet. Like, I look at these situations and it's like the more complex, the more unlikely. It's like it would have taken so much, you know, acquiescence and so much collaborative work to pull it off. And again, they couldn't get anywhere with it. And it's like, well, if you didn't get anywhere with it through legal means, then you'd have to prove that process is also corrupt and that they didn't look at the right things or something. So, like, let's say I'm trying to go through the proper legal means to get somebody convicted of a crime that I know they committed, you know, and I'm trying to find evidence, and they walk free, right? I can't go vigilante. Like, you can't take it into your own hands, even if I think that the judge was paid off, or I think that the process was corrupt. It's like, that's fine, but you can't take it into your own hands. So I think that's where I don't think they had legal grounds to, like, do anything. I was like, no, they're going to come up short here. I don't think they're going to keep him from running again. I don't think they're going to be able to prosecute. But I think it was enough to say, yeah, this guy should not be the front runner for the Republicans anymore. Get him out of here. Like, this is not how you behave. This is not how you conduct yourself. You got to go. And I actually thought that well before January 6th happened. I don't think he's qualified as a leader. It doesn't matter his politics. So I've continued to hope that he becomes so extreme that the Republican Party is forced to be like, nah, we're not doing this, which could obviously fracture the base, and that's scary. So you don't want them to give into fear here, but that's what I've continued to hope happens, is he just keeps kind of going off, and they're like, no, this isn't going to work, bro.
We'll continue to go deeper with this part of the discussion, I think, in the trenches, because we want to save a little bit of our own personal takes. You know, I've already kind of gone there, but I want to say on the record, I am concerned that if Donald Trump wins the nomination for the Republican Party, that he will not win the presidency. It's almost a concession, if that makes sense, because I think they figured it out. I say they, and I refer to those that are opposed to him becoming president, that are a part of the high up of the political system, and everything indirectly involved in that equation as well. I think that he ascended to the presidency in 2016 by riding his wave of celebrity, by using means that had never been used before, i.e. social media, specifically Twitter. I think that the power players that are involved, how do I put this? I don't think he would be able to win in the same way again. And I think that if he did win the presidency, it's going to be so divisive for our country that it might push us past the point of no return. Those are my concerns about him in specific. You've made a lot of opinions on there that I'll respond to in the next segment, because I think we need to keep going through the video.
Yeah. Yep. Crowd really liked what you said, Andrew.
I know. I'm used to that.
Ben Franklin said our country was a republic if you can keep it. Well, we can't. And unless a miracle happens on Tuesday, we didn't. Democracy is on the ballot, and unfortunately, it's going to lose. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's not something you can change your mind about in reverse. That's gender. So here's what's going to happen. Republicans will take control of Congress, and next year they'll begin impeaching Biden and never stop. They'll impeach him for getting out of Afghanistan and getting into Ukraine. For inflation, for recession, for falling off his bike, it won't matter, and it won't make sense. But Biden will be a crippled duck when he goes up against the 2024 Trump-Kari Lake ticket. And even if Trump loses, it doesn't matter. On Inauguration Day 2025, he's going to show up, whether he's on the list or not. And this time, he's not going to take no for an answer, because this time he will have behind him the army of election deniers that is being elected in 4 days. There are almost 300 candidates on the ballot this year who don't believe in ballots. And they'll be the ones writing the rules and monitoring how votes are counted in 24. The facts, the policies, the behavior don't matter anymore. Trump could be filmed throwing a baby off a bridge and still win. Not to give Herschel Walker any idea.
Okay, pause.
That was the thing.
Gosh, there's so much in here, man. We're going to struggle to make it through this. One, he was wrong, obviously. What he was predicting was going to happen did not happen. That was the first time I saw it suggested that Trump would run with Kari Lake, but that would make a lot of sense, actually. The big question is, and this is total periphery, who's going to run for the Democrats in 2024?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know.
Biden. It can't be Biden. He's barely keeping it together. He barely can do interviews right now.
He's also not fit to be president, but let's be honest. The presidential office in America, more and more, it's about being a figurehead.
Right.
You know? And I would make a similar argument to the office of the vice president as well. The people that are actually making decisions we don't see their faces, a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, so Bill Maher was wrong, and there's a lot of fear being expressed by him right there.
Mhm.
Oh, they're gonna win, the world's going to end, and you know, he's just taking. I mean, this is typical party politics, man. This is bipartisan discussion here, and so he's doing the thing. He's throwing punches at people on the opposite side of the political spectrum from him, and he's doing it. This is a desperate attempt to use whatever platform that he has to basically tell people, if the red wave comes, the world is ending.
Right.
Right?
I mean, his predictions can be wrong, but his concerns can be right. Like, I have concerns if there's that many people running for office that think that Trump had an election stolen from him. It's like, what? Like, where? There's just no evidence for that. So to have that many people getting elected and put into office who are along that wavelength, like, that is kind of concerning, because that can create a diluting movement to say, well, the entire edifice, we can't trust it. You can't trust these elections. You can't trust these ballots. And when that starts to shake, what Bill Maher is saying doesn't sound that crazy, that, like, yeah, democracy as we know it will come to an end, because if you get enough people and you get enough people elected to think that this entire thing is a sham, well, then who's right, who's wrong, who's lying, who's telling the truth? At that point, it would only be a matter of power. It would not be a matter of truth. You would rule. That's what leads to, like, tyrannical fascist rule. You rule purely with mob and power and strength. You don't rule with evidence-based anything. So his predictions didn't come true, but his concerns, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of concerned too if that many people are getting elected and running for office that think that.
Well, do you have ultimate faith in our electoral process right now at this stage in history? Like, gauge it.
I don't.
High level, medium level, low level, no level?
As far as the Electoral College and the whole process goes, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets reworked over the next 20 years, because I do think there's valid criticisms from intelligent people about the way that it currently operates. That, I think, is fine. I also don't have a whole lot of confidence in the mechanism of the government. I don't think they're very good at anything, personally. If you look at any programs they take over, anything they try to launch, they typically overspend and underdeliver. And I also believe at this point it's incredibly corrupt. I think that's different than saying we have people that are stealing elections. Like, it's one thing to look at the process and say this is corrupt and needs to be reworked, and it's another thing to be like casting doubt on whether or not things have actually transpired. Do you see the difference there? In my mind, there's a categorical difference between the two.
I see them as being pretty similar, because if you're expressing a reasonable doubt for the process itself, then how can you trust the results? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I would have to see. I would have to see who's making a case that we should doubt the process is trustworthy. Does it need to be re-examined? Is it leading to a government for the people and by the people? Like, we can examine that. That's not the same as examining whether or not it's a reliable. Are we getting honest results? Are they being manipulated? Are they lying to us? That's the question that people are asking.
Well, and the question is, when it comes to elections, how many variables are present? How much sway is there in these numbers, and how are the numbers calculated? Who counts the votes? The variables I see are the gerrymandering that takes place prior to elections, That's a huge variable.
Mm-hmm.
2, voting machines. There's been a lot of controversy about are the machines up to date? Are the machines yeah, everything from them being old to them being owned by China. So there's debate about voting machines. There's debate about if you I don't know if you've paid attention to Arizona, but that's still not over. There's what's her name won, Katie Hobbs, and then Carrie Lake has filed a lawsuit that she lost the first round of and then appealed it, so it's still going. But if you look at that election, there was problems with the voting machines. There's problems with the paper. There was problems with the workers. There was problems with the actual voting centers being able to accommodate people on the day of the vote.
Yeah. Give me one.
And so there's a lot of variables in the electoral process, that can be exploited.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We haven't talked about ballot harvesting. We haven't talked about, a lot of the little tricks, that honestly both sides use.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I have to pause the recording. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're back. Sorry, quick little. I had to pause the recording. My daughter whacked herself in the face. She's okay, but I had to pause to make sure
she's okay.
Yeah, she's all right. So, Andrew was saying there's things that need to be looked at. There's stuff going on that we have to be,
a lot of variables.
A lot of variables. Totally agree. Let's keep watching what Bill Maher has to say here about the future of democracy in America.
This really is the crossing the Rubicon moment when the election deniers are elected, which is often how countries slide into authoritarianism, not with tanks in the streets, but by electing the people who then have no intention of ever giving it back. The Republican up for Wisconsin governor just said if he's elected, quote, Republicans will never lose another election. This is how it happens. Hitler was elected. So was Mussolini, Putin, Erdogan, Viktor Orban. This is the it can't happen to us moment that's happening to us right now. We just don't feel it yet. We're the Titanic right after the iceberg hit. And honestly, too many Americans just don't care and won't even care after it happens because they never followed politics to begin with and were never taught in school what democratic government was supposed to look like. So how sad can they be about losing something they never knew they had? You can try and tell them that we will no longer have a system of checks and balances, but they will have an answer for that. What's checks and balances? Democracy's hard. Athens didn't have to deal with Fox News or the smartphone that made everybody stupid, and they only lasted 200 years. So our 246 doesn't look that bad. But before we do go, I'd like to say a little farewell to some of the things that really did make America great that now we're going to lose forever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Give me a break, dude.
He's being dramatic.
Give me a break.
He's being dramatic. He's an entertainer. He's an entertainer.
I can't be quiet anymore.
He's an entertainer.
Okay, this is ridiculous. Keep going.
Well, I was gonna say, I did want to say, I don't disagree with some of the logic. Like, if you vote for people who are actively attacking the very thing that they're using to get elected, it is...
Yeah, but we're talking in buzzwords again, okay? Society right now, especially in the media, it's all about labeling people, okay? So what he's talking about democracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What makes for a functioning government by the people, for the people? It's the participation of the people that makes the democracy run, right?
Yep.
And so what he's really saying is that nobody cares because nobody participates. And the reality is we've got now a couple, if not several generations who are emerging to replace the previous generations,
Mm-hmm.
who fought in wars, who came up during a different time. And our generation and those that come after us, we haven't had any calamities. We've grown up in prosperity. And we just don't have a clue. How do I put this? We take everything for granted because we haven't fought for anything. We haven't earned anything. It's like, I'm sure you've experienced this before. If you receive money as a gift and then you buy something, let's say, you get $20 and you go out and you buy, what does $20 buy? A hamburger?
Not much.
You're going to value that hamburger less than if you worked for the money to earn the ability to pay for that hamburger yourself, right? You're more likely to waste the hamburger, to not eat, whatever. I don't know if you ever experienced that in your life, but when you're given something that's not yours, human nature dictates that you will most likely not value that thing as much, right? And so our generation and the generations that come after us, we don't value the things that make our country special. We certainly don't value quote unquote freedom as much as previous generations, at least in concept. We take it for granted. We take a lot of things for granted. So he's bringing it back to my original point. He's expressing the fact that we don't care. We're not, a large group of people in this country are going to not pay attention, not participate, be apathetic. And that's really what he's getting at, and why he's, sounding the alarm, so to speak, for what was about to happen back in November, which didn't come to fruition. It's kind of funny because his entire argument is moot, because all the fatalism was based upon a reality that he saw as inevitable that wasn't. You know what I mean?
Well, the impeachment.
I wanted to go ahead.
I was going to say the steady impeachment of Biden didn't happen, but I still think I agree with him that if you have people saying, "Yeah, once I'm elected, we'll never lose another election again," like that's just that entrenched, it's us or them, I'm never leaving this office mentality. That would be the concern that I would have is that DNA, is that Trump DNA spreading into this idea of we are taking over. You stole an election. We're stealing everything back, and we won't leave. We won't peaceably leave. Like that would be my biggest concern is how many of these people that are sort of siding with him and denying that the election was a valid election, is that DNA setting down deeply in them to be like, yeah, no, we're not ever leaving. This is our office now.
2 points. One, is it wrong? This is the original point that I was trying to make. It is not wrong to question the processes of your government. In fact, ironically, that is what makes a democratic process successful, is the participation of the citizenry in challenging, in thinking critically, in participating in the legislative and the governmental process.
Mm-hmm.
More and more and more in our society, average citizens, lay people, non-political office holders do not participate in government. We just sort of live vicariously through our elected officials, in a sense, in terms of our political opinions or political identities or lack thereof. And then we expect them to do the right thing. But if history has shown us anything, it's that the larger that government becomes, the more corrupt it becomes. Or even if you were to apply that principle to, a more universal view of humanity, the larger structures, systems of people become, or the more powerful they become, the more corrupt they become. We see this with corporations.
Mm-hmm.
We see this with, countless examples. Bringing it back to the idea of participating in the process as a citizen, as an average citizen, we've come up with this term, election denier, another buzzword, just like democracy, that is applied to anyone that questions the authority of the electoral process in America right now. I do. I guess that makes me an election denier. But the problem that I have is with these sweeping black or white labeling of people.
Right.
And that's really why I'm here, is because we're seeing this across the board. And I personally am tired of being lumped in with a group because I question things. I don't think it's wrong to question things. I'm not an election denier because I question that validity of our electoral process in 2023.
Right. That would be, I guess, the question is looking through when he had that stat up on the screen that there's 300 people running for office that buy into Trump's lies, right? Like that's a hypercharged headline as it is, right? Like
But you're saying even you saying buying into Trump's lies, that's loaded.
That's what I'm saying. The headline was charged, right? Like
okay.
If we looked beneath that headline, how many of those people did they genuinely say, no, yeah, I agree with Trump, they stole the election? Well, that's an election denier. That's not somebody questioning the process in a critical way to say, do we need to examine, is this working anymore? Are we having elements of shifting regions and counties around to make sure that certain people stay elected? Like that, I think is totally fine. I saw a special on that. It was, I forget where it was. It might have been out in Portland where they were like, we can't get certain people out of office because they manipulate how the votes are tallied with the, what's that called? Is that the thing that you're referring to, the gerrymandering, like the way that they...
Gerrymandering is the redrawing of political boundaries geographically.
Yeah.
So voting districts.
That's what this was about. Yeah.
There's a lot of controversy and battle over the lines for congressional districts, because if you think about it, if one segment of a city has a great concentration of one type of voter,
Mm-hmm.
and you were to include that, you know what I'm saying, that can be used to flip and sway states or cities, and that's constantly manipulated in every election. But that's just one variable.
Yeah, I saw a special on that. They were basically saying, like, we've never been able to switch from, I don't know if it was a Republican or a Democrat, but they were basically like, we can't switch who's in office because they always reassign and reshift everything to ensure that this person stays elected. Well, that's totally fine. Like if we want to examine those things and say, do these things need to be, adjusted or made more fair or, investigated? Then yeah, let's do that. That again is my question. How many people are being labeled election denier who are maybe questioning the process? How many of them are genuine election deniers? Because those are the people I'd be more worried about. Like that doesn't...
But where did that term come from? Election denier.
I mean...
Because it's so loaded.
But when I was on my Facebook account, the night that this all happened, I had people that I really respected that were like, this is a scam. They stole the election. Trump won. Like there are people to this day that believe that. They believe that Trump won and they stole it and they cheated, and all the lawsuits that got thrown out, all the lawsuits that went nowhere. There are people that to this day believe, no, Trump won that election, that they stole it.
But you're saying that that's garbage. Anybody who believes that is totally a wacko. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying they're a wacko. I'm saying if it's not evidence-based, then it's ideologically based. There was no evidence to point that they stole the election. Every case that came up about this was thrown out, like, systematically. They tried in so many different places to prove that there was corruption, that there was shenanigans that went on, and there was no proof. And it's like, okay, so in the absence of proof, we have to believe in a greater conspiracy then, that not only was there a widespread conspiracy to steal the election from Trump, there was a further conspiracy to stop any of the proof to come to light. Like that level of conspiracy to me is so close to delusional. It's like there's no evidence here. Like if there was, it would have been almost impossible to keep quiet. The level of involvement, it's a lot of the conspiracies that are out there, like like Earth is flat, or we didn't land on the moon. It's like the level of involvement in these conspiracies would require so much complexity. It makes them so implausible that it's, I don't know. I wasn't compelled. So anybody that's compelled, I felt like they were compelled by ideology. They had committed ahead of time, like, no, Trump's winning. And when he didn't win, it was like the only explanation for this is it was stolen.
We got to finish this video and then we can go further with this in the next segment. By the way, let me mention this. If you have a clip that you would be interested in us dissecting, debating, deconstructing, please suggest it on our Patreon community. Join our Patreon if you're not a part of it already. We completely survive and carve out time in our schedules to do this show based upon listener support.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to support the show is to go on our Patreon, and that is patreon.com/ceasefire podcast, and subscribe. And we have a ton of juicy bonus content on there that is 100% worth the investment on a monthly basis. And if you become a part of our Patreon community, we invite you to leave a comment on there as a part of the show post this episode's what would you call it? Just leave a comment and tell us if you have suggestions, thoughts, or otherwise.
Yeah.
Keep going with the clip now.
Yeah.
That was my shameless plug.
I don't know how much time is left.
Like the peaceful transfer of power, the jewel in our crown, that thing that so many other nations couldn't pull off that we always did. Oh, well, the Bill of Rights. When there is no accountability at the ballot box, there are no actual rights. Look, Generalissimo Trump is not going to bring back child labor or end Social Security or resegregate the water fountains. He doesn't hate Jews. Ivanka's a Jew and he loves her. Now that she's 40, only as a friend, but still.
That's hard.
What's he trying to say there?
That he likes younger women.
But make no mistake, it will be an entirely different way of life for many, because our elections will just be for show, like in China and Russia and all the other places Trump says are very strong. Free speech? Well, he's a man who's always taken criticism well. But I wouldn't count on that one lasting. I wouldn't count on
I just have a hard time with
and
anyone who blames Trump for the ails of society and is basically saying you're an idiot if you don't vote Democrat. That's basically what he's saying. Well, if you vote Republican, you're destroying our country. And I don't agree with that. Not because I am a staunch Republican, but because the angle with which he's coming from here, the left controls everything in our society. And that's a problem. They control the schools. They control the media. They control, the big pharma. They control big tech. I could keep going. I mean, his team controls most stuff in America now. And that's what I see as the biggest threat to our democracy. Is you can't have one side. If you have a two-party system, you can't have one party controlling everything. How does their side, democracy.
How does their side control the media? Like Fox News is massive. Their viewership is incredible. The Republicans.
There's only one major network and major streaming platform that isn't controlled by the left. And that's Fox News.
I've not done enough. I've not done enough research into that. I think most of those media outlets are a joke, Fox included. I think they're a joke, and I think that I'd have to do more research into that because I've seen a lot of the claims.
I mean, ABC's Disney, and so is ESPN.
Right.
That's all extreme. That's very left.
I just remember people claiming that
NBC the same.
I just remember people claiming that like Republicans were being silenced and having such a hard time because the left was running YouTube and Twitter.
They have been.
They have been, but it's not
until recently.
It's not substantiated by the facts. Prior to Elon Musk owning Twitter, Republicans did far better on Twitter with respect to engagement, impressions, follower counts. They flourish in those environments. By claiming that they're being silenced, they actually flourish. They're dishonest about it. This happens on YouTube all the time. You have all these guys claiming that they're being silenced by this liberal agenda on YouTube, and all it does is entrench them and help their viewership. Some of the best and most successful podcasts and channels on YouTube are conservative. Like, I've not been able to...
YouTube in specific caters to both sides.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot because we have such a presence on... Well, we are establishing a presence on YouTube.
We're trying. It's impossible to do in the middle. But I'm just pushing back on that notion. I know that notion was... People were trying to claim that about Twitter. And it's like, Republicans crush it on Twitter. They're so good. They all the stats are in their favor on Twitter. That's pre-Elon, okay? Now, I don't know about... how much the left owns in, as far as tech. I mean, I know, Silicon Valley is very much in the left way of thinking. I'm even seeing this in the development world in gaming now. Even gaming development companies are very progressive, very left. Like, I don't think I would have ever...
Most of them are left.
I would have never dreamed of a gaming outlet publishing a blog about abortion. I was like, what on earth? You make video games. What is happening? But... I do think that I don't want to put words in Bill Maher's mouth. That was my first pushback was I don't think he's saying if you vote Republican, you're an idiot. I think what he's saying is Republicans have lost their way. Like, if you vote for this party, if you vote for Trump, he does not believe in this process.
But Trump's not even running. Trump wasn't even running. I know that he endorsed a lot of candidates, but...
This is the runway to him running.
It's crazy to me that it was about Trump. We're talking about midterms, and he's talking about Trump, which is crazy.
Because
the other thing that's crazy is like...
It's not crazy. It's not crazy.
The left gets traffic by talking about Trump.
Sure.
Because there's such a disdain among the left.
Sure. And Jon Stewart criticized CNN for this the one time they had him on. He was like, why do you always have to make it about Trump? However, I'm connecting the line that Maher is connecting here. All of these people, not all, a majority of these people getting elected are super pro-Trump. They're in his camp. They got endorsements from him.
But they didn't win. A lot of them didn't win.
No, a lot of them didn't win, sure. But he's connecting the dots here. Obviously, some of his predictions didn't come true. The point I think that he is making is that if you're going to back him, you're backing a fundamental shift in democracy because of what he's attempted to do, because of what he's attempted to usurp and say. So I don't necessarily know if he's saying, oh, if you vote Republican, you are. But it's like the Republicans have got to figure out what they're going to do with Trump then, because there's pockets of Republicans that don't want anything to do with him, and that's the real question. You got guys like Romney and others that are like, we should not be letting this guy at all be our guy. And what's that gonna do when it comes time for the presidential election is a big question.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to watch the rest.
Okay, let's finish this up and move over.
And the
to
other
next
shock
segment.
troops of the Trump takeover of the Republican Party are all quasi-religious entities who want a Christian government. Oh, and the FBI might be replaced by an army of Proud Boys under the leadership of Michael Flynn. Even something like pot.
That's not going to happen.
Legal? It probably depends on whether Snoop Dogg calls Trump brilliant one day. I mean, that's how things will be decided, not by the rule of law. Ah, the rule of law. That one was a real jewel, yeah. Maybe our finest hour as Americans was after World War II when we gave even the defeated Nazis a fair trial. Justice Robert Jackson said that voluntarily submitting our captive, defeated enemies to the rule of law was one of the most significant tributes that power had ever paid to reason. Well, power will very soon not be paying any more tributes to reason. Not in America, anyway. So, yeah, I urge you to vote, but I've always been a realist. I'm afraid democracy is like the McRib. It's here now. It'll be around for a little bit longer, so enjoy it while you can.
So democracy's gone if blue candidates aren't in office.
I think it's about.
I disagree.
I feel like it's more. I do not agree with that. If that's his general premise, I do not agree with that. I do agree if Trump's brand of politics gets a foothold, if the people that agree with him support him and he's endorsed whatever, if his DNA gets firmly rooted in the Republican Party, then I do agree that that's bad. I don't think it's the end of democracy, but I think that's incredibly bad for democracy in America. I think Trump is bad for American government. I think he's bad for American culture. So I don't think he's a figurehead that we want representing us in any field, not even in the entertainment world, because of the things that he did and the things that happened in behind closed doors and things he was caught saying. Like, he's reprehensible. So I don't know if that's what Maher is saying, though. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. My general consensus or my take from what he said was, if this is what people think and they're getting elected, and if this guy, this figurehead, if Trump thinks all these things and he gets elected again, we're in trouble. Like, it's alarmist, it's hyperbolic, he's trying to get views, right? There's elements to it that's overstated and exaggerated. I mean, he jokes at the end about the McRib. So I'll leave it to you to end this segment.
There's just so much more to be said. We will say it in the trenches next, and I imagine this is going to be entertaining and interesting, our conversation. I wasn't buying much of what he was selling. Obviously, part of it is because hindsight is 2020, and he's making an appeal to voters based upon basically being afraid that the red wave was going to sweep through Congress, which didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of a great summary statement for this. Where I keep coming back to is I don't think it's wrong to question our government or our process. Our country's in trouble, man. We just hit, was it $31.4 trillion in debt? Like, we hit the debt ceiling again. There's a problem. Our government is spending too much money because they don't care. It's, I heard an analogy, or a parallel that was drawn recently. It's like, you think about, again, it's a human nature thing. You think about being given a bunch of, let's say that you were, a financial manager, and you're given, tons of money, millions of dollars to invest on behalf of someone else. Are you going to exert the amount of care on investing that money for someone else that you as you would if it was your money? You know what I mean? And the answer is probably not. It's similar to like taking something for granted that you've been given. Our government just spends money like it's going out of style, like there's no consequences,
right?
But it's future generations and current generations that are going to end up having to pay for this, or it's going to cause some sort of cataclysm economically soon. There is a problem with corruption in top to bottom with our government. And if it's not confronted and dealt with, and we don't come to a place in the citizenry where we can find some common ground moving ahead, I think the threat of losing the identity of our country is very real. And again, that's why we're doing this show, is because there's some concerns out there that we have that originate with the idea of us being so divided and so tribalistic and so fractured. And that's really what we're trying to confront here. So summary reaction to what Bill Maher is saying, largely I feel like it's in line with a lot of what I see coming from the left side of things. Do some of the things he was suggesting have merit? Sure, of course. Largely, do I disagree with the sentiment of what he was saying? Well, yeah, especially in hindsight, because what he was saying was going to happen didn't. You know what I mean? So this alarmist thing, that he's putting out in the world was turned out to be unnecessary.
Yeah.
But let's jump to the next segment and dissect further and discuss further.
Yeah, if you guys made it this far, this is one of our longest free pieces of the episode. The opening thing is always free. We call it the flyover. Sometimes it's 20 minutes.
First segment.
Sometimes it's an hour. This is going to be right at an hour. And if you want to hear us get more personal, dig down into our own beliefs, like how do we apply our own personal beliefs to these situations, that's what the trenches is for. And then we always end every episode with a debrief. So use ceasefirepodcast.com to support at those levels. Eventually, we'll have that on YouTube. It's going to be a slow process. We're having pretty slow growth on YouTube because there doesn't seem to be any place for moderate discussion on here. We should have just, I guess, done a red state Republican show. No, we wouldn't have done that because it would have been so.
But that would have been dishonest.
It would have been dishonest because we don't fall into those categories. So, all right. We will see you on the other side in the trenches. If not, we'll see you in the next episode, wherever you're choosing to listen. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Ceasefire Podcast. See you in the next segment.